Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever felt like the more you try to hold onto him, the further he drifts away? Like no matter how much effort you pour in, how many texts you send, or how often you show up, it just isn't enough. What if I told you that everything you think is helping you actually has the opposite effect? That trying too hard is quietly pushing him away? Today, I'm going to reveal the subtle mistakes that are killing attraction, the hidden dynamics that make him pull back, and how you can flip the script so desire grows naturally, effortlessly, and irresistibly. And ladies and gentlemen, let's start with this. If you feel like you're constantly bending over backwards, doing everything in your power to hold on to someone, to make them notice you, or to make them love you, I want you to pause for a second and really consider what's happening, because here's the truth. Trying too hard doesn't make someone stay. It often has the opposite effect. When you push with too much force, you actually risk driving him away, and it's not because he's bad or unloving. It's because human connection doesn't work like a transaction. Relationships aren't about a list of efforts or constant demonstrations of care or proof that you're worthy. They're about balance, ease, and mutual desire, and think about it for a moment. Have you ever noticed how when someone is chasing you relentlessly, no matter how nice, interesting, or attentive they are, your instinct can often be to pull back? It's natural. It's wired into us. When someone appears too eager, too desperate, or too available, it removes a sense of mystery, challenge, and intrigue. Desire isn't sparked by force, it's sparked by a sense of choice and autonomy. The more you try to force a connection, the more you risk making the other person feel trapped or overwhelmed, even if your intentions are entirely loving. And now, I know it can feel counterintuitive. You want to give everything, to show him you care, to make sure he never doubts your feelings. And that's admirable. It's human to want to protect and nurture a bond. But here's the subtle truth. When you try too hard, you inadvertently put yourself in a position of vulnerability that isn't attractive. It becomes a signal that your sense of self and your happiness depends on his approval or presence, and no one, not even the person you're trying to impress, feels comfortable with that kind of pressure. And here's a practical way to frame it. Imagine you're holding a butterfly in your hand. If you squeeze too tightly, desperate to hold onto it, it struggles and eventually flies away. But if you hold your hand gently, allowing it space, it may choose to stay perched on your finger of its own free will. Relationships work the same way. When you try too hard, you are literally squeezing the life out of natural attraction. You're trying to manufacture a feeling that should develop organically, and feelings that are forced don't feel real to the other person. And another point to consider is how trying too hard affects your energy. People are drawn to those who feel grounded, confident, and content with themselves. But when your focus is entirely on making him love you, your energy shifts from magnetic to needy, and neediness is exhausting. It creates a dynamic where he unconsciously feels responsible for your happiness, and humans don't naturally enjoy responsibility that comes with guilt or pressure. The more you try to fill a void, the more he feels it, and the more distant he may become, not because he doesn't care, but because the balance of the interaction has shifted. And it's important to recognize that trying too hard often comes from a place of fear. Fear of loss, fear of being rejected, fear that he won't choose you. And when you operate from fear, it's visible. You may send too many messages, check in excessively, or overanalyze every word and gesture. You're not acting from a place of abundance, you're acting from a place of scarcity. Scarcity energy is noticeable and can be off-putting. Confidence, on the other hand, is magnetic because it signals that you value yourself and your own life, regardless of how someone else behaves. And I want to be clear, this isn't about playing games or being manipulative. It's about understanding psychology and human nature. When you stop trying too hard, when you step back and allow space, you give him the opportunity to step forward voluntarily. You allow him to invest in you not because you've forced his hand, but because he genuinely wants to. That's the difference between connection that feels like obligation and connection that feels alive. And many women make the mistake of thinking that showing too much care, being overly available, or constantly chasing will secure a man's feelings. But true attraction thrives on contrast. You are most appealing when you are full of your own life, passions, and independence. When you are living fully, not contingent on his attention, he notices you more. Your value isn't in how much you give him, it's in who you are when you aren't giving him everything. And here's a critical exercise. Shift your focus from trying to control his feelings to cultivating your own. Pursue your goals, spend time with friends, develop your hobbies, and enjoy your freedom. When you are engaged in your own life, you radiate confidence and joy, and these are inherently attractive traits. When a man sees that you are complete and happy without him, it ignites a desire to be a part of your life not out of guilt, but out of genuine attraction. And remember, attraction is not linear. You may experience moments where he seems distant, and your instinct is to push harder. Resist this urge. In fact, when he pulls away slightly, it's an invitation to lean back, not chase. This creates healthy tension, which is the fuel of desire. When you respect his space and maintain your own, you're communicating that your self-worth is independent of his behavior, which paradoxically makes him want to invest more. And it's also vital to recognize your triggers. What makes you try too hard? Often it's rooted in past experiences, childhood patterns, previous heartbreaks, or low self-esteem. Awareness is the first step. When you notice the urge to overextend, take a breath and ask yourself, am I acting from fear or from freedom? Acting from freedom always wins. Acting from fear always repels, and ultimately, attraction is a delicate balance of give and take, pursuit and retreat, closeness and distance. Trying too hard disrupts this balance. The person who understands this principle has a powerful advantage. They don't chase, they allow. They create space for desire to flourish rather than suffocate it. You want to be someone who is desired, not someone who is demanded. Desire cannot be forced, it cannot be bargained for. It responds only to authenticity, confidence, and independence. And so, instead of asking yourself, how can I make him love me? Shift the question to, how can I live so fully that he wants to be a part of my life? That shift in mindset is transformational. It's not about becoming someone new, it's about embracing your own worth, your own passions, and your own joy. And when you do that, when you stop trying too hard, when you stop over-explaining, over-texting, and over-investing too soon, something incredible happens. He feels the pull, the curiosity, the excitement that naturally comes from being with someone who is fully themselves. And you see, it's not that you don't care or that you shouldn't act. it's that your actions need to have the right energy behind them. There's a difference between showing interest in a confident, grounded way and trying to secure someone's love from a place of fear. The former attracts, the latter repels. The former invites him in, the latter pushes him away. And this principle applies not just in romantic relationships. It applies in friendships, in professional settings, and in life in general. The more you try to force acceptance or validation, the more it slips away. But when you act from a place of certainty in yourself, you create natural influence. You don't need to push, you don't need to prove. You just exist fully, and the right people are drawn toward you naturally, and if you want, I can also craft a 30-second attention grabbing hook for this speech to use in a video or speech intro. It would pair perfectly with this motivational content. Do you want me to do that next? And absolutely. Let's continue the speech seamlessly, expanding it by another one, 0 words in the same tone and style. And now, let's dig even deeper, because understanding this principle intellectually is one thing, but applying it consistently is where most people stumble. You see, the challenge isn't just knowing that trying too hard pushes him away. It's feeling the fear that tempts you to act anyway. That fear whispers, if I don't do everything I can, he might lose interest. If I don't chase, I might miss my chance. And here's the truth, fear is a liar. Fear is not your friend in matters of attraction. Acting from fear creates urgency, tension, and pressure, and all of these are subtle signals that say to him, I am dependent on you. No one is drawn to dependence. Desire thrives in autonomy, and let's talk about the subtle ways trying too hard manifests. You might overtext, checking in too often, reacting immediately to every message, or constantly seeking reassurance about what he's thinking. You might overanalyze his actions, reading into every word, every pause, every double text. And all of this, even though your intentions are pure, communicates an invisible energy. I am unsure. I am desperate. My happiness is tied to your attention. He doesn't need to consciously register it. Humans are incredibly sensitive to energy. Even the slightest hint of neediness or overeagerness can make him instinctively take a step back. And another common pattern is overgiving. Maybe you find yourself bending over backward, always saying yes, always accommodating, always putting his needs first at the expense of your own. And again, this comes from a place of love, but there's a fine line between love and self-abandonment. If you consistently sacrifice your own time, boundaries, and energy to win someone over, you're sending a silent message. My worth is contingent on you. And attraction is never built on that. Attraction is built on confidence, self-respect, and the understanding that you are whole, complete, and valuable regardless of how he behaves. And now, here's where most women get it wrong. They think if they simply do enough, he will commit, he will care, he will love. And while effort is part of connection, it is the wrong kind of effort that repels. The effort that works isn't frantic, desperate, or constant. It's calm, measured, and intentional. It's showing interest without losing yourself in the process. It's expressing care without creating obligation. It's communicating value, not pleading for attention. And when you get this balance right, you stop being someone who chases, and you become someone who magnetically attracts. And here's a critical concept. The pull of desire is fueled by contrast. Let me explain. Human attraction thrives on seeing someone who is emotionally available, but not emotionally dependent. Someone who shows warmth but doesn't overextend. Someone who is generous but maintains boundaries. This contrast creates intrigue, curiosity, and longing. When you try too hard, you erase the contrast. You become predictable, all in, and, paradoxically, less interesting. Desire is not created by effort alone. It's created by the space between connection and independence. And space is powerful. Space allows him to reflect, to feel, to miss you, and to invest voluntarily. Space is where attraction grows naturally. When you stop overpursuing, you give him the freedom to make the choice to come closer, rather than feel obligated to. And here's the paradox: the more you create space, the more he invests. It's counterintuitive, but it's psychology in action. When someone is free, yet chooses to return, their feelings are authentic. When someone is pressured, even subconsciously, their feelings are often compliant or fleeting. And now, let's talk about confidence. Confidence is not arrogant. It's not about pretending you're indifferent or acting like you don't care. Confidence is rooted in knowing your own worth, embracing your own life, and being comfortable with whatever outcome unfolds. Confidence allows you to interact with him from a position of security, not scarcity. Scarcity is what drives overtrying. Security is what drives attraction. When a man senses that you are emotionally independent, he unconsciously wants to lean in because he doesn't feel the weight of your insecurities. And one of the most common mistakes is over-explaining. Women often feel compelled to clarify their actions, justify their feelings, or rationalize their intentions. But over-explaining communicates a lack of trust in yourself and in him. It says, "I need you to understand me perfectly, otherwise this won't work." And here's the harsh truth: no one wants to feel like they are responsible for decoding your worth. Simplicity is magnetic. Clear, calm communication without overcomplication allows him to experience you fully, without feeling like he's being tested or manipulated. And another key point is timing. Timing is everything in human connection. Trying too hard often comes from a desire to control timing, speeding things up, forcing intimacy, pushing for clarity before it naturally arises. But feelings develop in their own rhythm. Desire cannot be rushed. When you allow timing to unfold naturally, you create moments of anticipation, excitement, and genuine curiosity. Trying to accelerate these moments diminishes their impact and risks overwhelming him. And it's also important to examine emotional investment. When you pour too much of yourself into someone who isn't yet fully invested, you create imbalance. And imbalance is a subtle tension that the other person may feel unconsciously. They may start to withdraw without even realizing why. Human beings are naturally drawn to reciprocity. If you are giving all your emotional energy while receiving little in return, it triggers discomfort rather than attraction. True connection thrives on mutual investment, not one-sided effort. And here's a practical mental shift: stop thinking about how to make him like you. Instead, focus on how to live in a way that makes you magnetic. Pursue your passions, nurture your friendships, and cultivate your own life. Develop routines, hobbies, and goals that excite you. When you live fully, your energy changes. You stop being available for the sake of being needed. You become desirable because you are genuinely desirable, not because you are seeking validation. And let's address the inner dialogue, because this is crucial. When you notice yourself spiraling, thinking, "I need him to text me, I need him to ask me out. I need him to notice me. Pause and reframe. Ask yourself, what would I do if I weren't afraid? How would I behave if I trusted my own worth? Acting from fear creates pressure. Acting from trust creates freedom. Freedom is irresistible. Fear is draining. You want him to be drawn to your freedom, not suffocated by your fear. And let's also explore the importance of patience. When you stop trying too hard, it doesn't mean you stop caring or stop engaging. It means you allow the relationship to evolve naturally without forcing outcomes. You learn to tolerate ambiguity, to let curiosity and attraction develop in their own rhythm. This patience communicates maturity, stability, and strength qualities that are universally attractive. And here's a truth that is often overlooked. The more you try to force love, the more you obscure your true self. When you are acting from fear or desperation, your actions are not authentic. You are performing a version of yourself designed to please. But humans are drawn to authenticity. Real attraction develops when you show up as you truly are, not as you think he wants you to be. The more you resist overtrying, the more authentic you become, and authenticity is magnetic. And finally, it's important to practice self-validation. Don't wait for him to affirm your worth. Don't hinge your happiness on his responses. Learn to validate yourself, to recognize your value, your beauty, your intelligence, and your power. When you are grounded in your own validation, your energy changes dramatically. You stop chasing, you stop trying too hard, and you start attracting someone who sees you for who you genuinely are and wants to be with you because of it. And now, let's take it a step further, because even when you understand these principles, there's still a very human temptation to fall back into old patterns. We're creatures of habit, and the brain loves certainty, even if that certainty is anxiety. When you feel that pull, that little voice urging you to text him again, to overplan interactions, to over-explain yourself, you have to pause and consciously choose a different response. This is where mastery begins, not in understanding attraction intellectually, but in training yourself emotionally to respond with awareness and calm rather than fear and urgency. And a key insight here is that attraction thrives on emotional balance. Emotional balance doesn't mean suppressing your feelings. It means being aware of them and managing your responses so that they don't create pressure. You can care deeply about someone while still maintaining your composure. You can feel excitement, longing, and desire without acting in ways that overwhelm him. This is where self-mastery and magnetism intersect. People are drawn to those who feel grounded in their own emotional world because it creates a safe space for them to express themselves freely. And think about the moments when you have felt overwhelmed by someone else's efforts. It could be a romantic partner, a friend, or even a colleague. Chances are, the intensity of their energy, no matter how well intentioned, made you feel uneasy, anxious, or smothered. Now, imagine the inverse, someone who is calm, centered, and confident, who expresses care without clinging. That's magnetic energy. That's the energy you want to cultivate. And the more you step back from trying too hard, the more you embody it naturally. And another layer to this is the role of curiosity in attraction. When you try too hard, you remove curiosity. Curiosity is a key driver of desire. It's the spark that keeps someone wanting to know more, to explore, to engage. When you over-explain, over-text, or over-give, You answer all the questions before he even has a chance to ask them. You remove the mystery, and human desire thrives on mystery. You don't need to be opaque or secretive. You just need to allow natural curiosity to flourish by giving him the space to wonder, explore, and invest emotionally at his own pace. And boundaries also play a crucial role. When you overextend yourself, you blur the lines of healthy boundaries. You may think you are being loving, but what you're actually doing is signaling that your limits are negotiable and that you are available at all times. Boundaries communicate self-respect and emotional stability. They tell him that your time, energy, and attention are valuable, and valuable things are inherently attractive. When you maintain your boundaries, you demonstrate that your love and care are not conditional on his behavior. They are rooted in your own integrity and self-worth. And now, let's address one of the most subtle traps: overanalyzing. Many women fall into the habit of dissecting every word, every gesture, every pause for hidden meaning. Did he mean that text a certain way? Why didn't he reply immediately? What if he's losing interest? This overthinking creates internal pressure, which translates into external energy that is unconsciously felt by him. You may think you are being thoughtful, but the reality is that overanalyzing often creates a sense of emotional instability, which diminishes attraction. The solution isn't to stop caring, it's to stop projecting fear onto every interaction and trust that connection develops naturally over time. And another dimension is the timing of your engagement. Trying too hard often means accelerating emotional or physical intimacy before the natural rhythm allows it. You may feel compelled to share everything about yourself, to disclose your feelings too soon, or to move the relationship faster than it's ready to move. This can create a pressure point where he feels the need to pull back, not because he doesn't like you, but because the pace feels unnatural. Desire requires patience. Desire requires rhythm. Let things unfold organically, and you create a dynamic that is magnetic and sustainable. And it's also essential to recognize that overtrying often comes from a need for external validation. You may feel anxious when you don't get immediate feedback, affirmation, or attention, but external validation is fleeting and unreliable. True confidence and true attraction comes from internal validation. When you validate yourself, you remove the desperation from your interactions. You become someone who radiates security, someone who acts from freedom rather than compulsion, someone whose energy is not contingent on another person's behavior. And consider the energy of scarcity versus abundance. Scarcity is, I need him to text me, I need him to want me, I need him to confirm I'm enough. Abundance is, I am complete on my own, and his attention is a bonus, not a necessity. Scarcity pushes. Abundance attracts. Scarcity creates tension. Abundance creates desire. And the key to maintaining this mindset is daily practice, reminding yourself that your value is inherent, not earned, and that the right person will invest in you willingly, without pressure, without coercion, without guilt. And another aspect to explore is self-investment. Too often, women pour all their emotional energy into someone else at the expense of themselves. They sacrifice hobbies, friendships, and personal growth in a misguided effort to be enough. The reality is that your life outside the relationship is your magnet. When you are fulfilled, passionate, and thriving, your energy changes. You stop being available solely for him. You start being available as a vibrant, full, and autonomous person, and that energy is irresistible. And even your communication style plays a role. When you overcommunicate, you remove suspense and natural curiosity. You may feel compelled to send multiple texts to explain your feelings, to clarify your intentions, or to ensure he understands your perspective. But the most magnetic communication is measured, intentional, and confident. It expresses interest without creating obligation, warmth without smothering, and openness without overexposure. This allows him to lean in of his own accord rather than feel pressured. And another subtle dynamic is emotional reciprocity. Trying too hard often leads to imbalanced emotional exchange. You may give more than you receive, and this imbalance, even if he doesn't consciously notice it, can create discomfort. Human beings are wired for fairness and balance in relationships. When you maintain your emotional equilibrium, giving proportionately and accepting proportionately, you create a natural flow of energy that sustains desire. And the way you handle rejection or delays in attention also matters. When you overtry, you react impulsively to perceived distance. You may chase, argue, or overcompensate, but when you respond with calm, grounded detachment, you demonstrate emotional maturity and self-control. This doesn't mean suppressing your feelings. It means expressing them without panic, without pressure, and without desperation. Emotional composure is profoundly attractive because it signals stability and security. And let's also touch on self-worth in relation to actions. Your worth is not determined by how much effort you expend, how attentive you are, or how much you please him. Your worth is inherent. When you internalize this truth, you stop overtrying, you stop overcompensating. You act from a place of authenticity, not fear, and authenticity is magnetic. People are drawn to those who are unapologetically themselves, confident in their own value, and grounded in their own identity. And curiosity, balance, and patience create a powerful trifecta. Curiosity allows him to invest emotionally. Balance ensures that the interaction is mutual, energizing, and sustainable. Patience allows desire to grow naturally. When you integrate these three principles into your approach, you move from a state of overtrying to a state of magnetic influence. You stop pushing him away and start inviting him in naturally, effortlessly, and with intention. And finally, let's remember the long-term view. Trying too hard may yield short-term attention, but it rarely builds lasting attraction. Relationships that begin with overeffort and desperation are prone to imbalance, tension, and eventual drift. But relationships built on authenticity, self-respect, patience, and magnetic energy are resilient. They are fueled by genuine desire, mutual investment, and emotional integrity. When you stop trying too hard, you stop performing. You stop bending yourself to fit someone else's expectations. You become someone irresistible not because you chase, but because you live fully, freely, and authentically, inviting him to do the same. And now, let's explore another layer of this dynamic, because understanding the why behind trying too hard is essential to truly mastering attraction. One of the biggest misconceptions is that love and desire are linear processes. You do X, he feels Y, and everything follows predictably. The reality is far more fluid. Attraction is a dance, not a formula. When you try too hard, you disrupt the rhythm of that dance. You step too far forward, and he unconsciously steps back. You pull too tightly, and he instinctively resists. Desire needs tension, space, and freedom to breathe. It cannot thrive under pressure, no matter how pure your intentions may be. And it's also critical to recognize that overtrying often comes from a deep, seated fear of being unworthy or unlovable. Many women carry the belief that they must earn someone's attention, affection, or commitment through effort. They think, if I just text more, show more, care more, he will choose me. But here's the truth: attraction doesn't work like a performance review. No amount of effort can substitute for the natural chemistry, mutual desire, and alignment of values that underpin lasting connection. When you try too hard, you are essentially attempting to manufacture feelings that must emerge organically. And feelings that are forced are never sustainable. And another common trap is over-anticipation. You may find yourself constantly imagining what he's thinking, planning your next move based on his potential reactions, or over-preparing conversations to ensure a perfect outcome. While this feels productive, it actually creates tension. It communicates an underlying message: I need this to work perfectly, or I will fail. Humans are drawn to those who are confident in uncertainty, those who can navigate the unknown without panic. When you over-anticipate, you inadvertently communicate the opposite, that your happiness is fragile, contingent, and dependent on his every move. And let's examine the subtle ways overtrying undermines natural attraction. One of the most common is excessive availability. When you are constantly available, you unintentionally signal that your time, energy, and attention are easily accessible. Scarcity, paradoxically, is attractive because it communicates value. When a man sees that you have a full, rich life, and that his presence is a privilege rather than an expectation, he is drawn in naturally. Availability without boundaries diminishes intrigue, while balanced engagement cultivates desire. And another subtle factor is emotional transparency without timing. Sharing feelings is essential, but oversharing too early can create a sense of imbalance. When you reveal every thought, every fear, and every desire before the natural progression of connection, it can feel like pressure rather than intimacy. Timing matters. Emotional expression is most compelling when it flows naturally, allowing both parties to invest gradually. When you allow feelings to emerge organically, your connection gains depth, intensity, and sustainability. And now, consider the role of humor, playfulness, and lightness in attraction. Overtrying often leads to seriousness, tension, and hyper-vigilance. You may feel compelled to impress, to prove your worth, or to ensure every interaction is meaningful. But attraction thrives on energy, not content. Playfulness, teasing, and light-hearted engagement create emotional highs that build desire. When you try too hard, you remove the spontaneity that makes connection enjoyable. Desire is a game of energy, rhythm, and emotional resonance, not checklists or over-effort. And another important concept is emotional projection. When you try too hard, you often project your insecurities onto him, assuming that his thoughts, intentions, or feelings are negative or uncertain. This projection creates tension in your behavior, even if you don't consciously realize it. Humans are incredibly sensitive to emotional cues, and he will unconsciously pick up on your anxiety. The result is that he may feel defensive, distant, or pressured, not because of anything he has done, but because of the energy you are projecting. And let's talk about the concept of scarcity versus abundance again, but in a deeper context. Scarcity is rooted in the belief that your happiness is contingent on him choosing you. Abundance is rooted in the belief that your life is full, rich, and rewarding regardless of his actions. Scarcity leads to behaviors that chase, push, and overextend. Abundance leads to behaviors that invite, entice, and allow for natural connection. The key is to internalize abundance not just intellectually, but emotionally. You want your energy to radiate freedom, confidence, and self-assurance because that energy is magnetic. And another subtle trap is seeking validation through small interactions. You may find yourself measuring his interest by likes, texts, or fleeting gestures, constantly recalibrating your behavior based on his responses. This creates a cycle of overtrying because your sense of security becomes dependent on external signals. True confidence comes from internal validation, knowing your worth independent of his behavior. When you act from self-assurance rather than seeking approval, your energy shifts and he is drawn to you naturally. And consider the principle of contrast in human attraction. When you overinvest, you remove contrast. Contrast is the difference between presence and absence, engagement and space, warmth and independence. It's what creates tension, intrigue, and desire. When you are constantly available, emotionally overinvested, and striving for his attention, you flatten the emotional landscape. Desire is not built on consistency alone. It is built on the interplay of engagement and distance, presence and autonomy. And another critical factor is respect for his autonomy. Trying too hard can unconsciously communicate, "I need to control your feelings, thoughts, or actions to feel secure." This creates subtle pressure that triggers resistance. Respecting his autonomy, allowing him to think, feel, and act freely, creates a sense of safety and psychological comfort. When a man feels free rather than pressured, he is more likely to invest authentically and consistently. And it's also important to examine the long-term consequences of overtrying. While frantic effort may generate short-term attention, it rarely builds lasting attraction. Relationships built on overeffort often develop imbalance, tension, and unsustainable dynamics. Lasting connection is rooted in mutual respect, emotional equilibrium, and authenticity. When you stop trying too hard, you allow the relationship to develop organically with desire that is real, voluntary, and enduring. And let's also discuss energy management. Trying too hard often drains your own energy while simultaneously creating subtle pressure for him. This imbalance in energy flow can result in emotional fatigue, frustration, and dissatisfaction. By focusing on your own energy, engaging fully in your passions, friendships, and personal growth, you maintain vitality while creating magnetic presence. A person who is energetically abundant is far more attractive than someone who is energetically depleted. And another layer is the psychology of tension and anticipation. Desire thrives on moments of suspense and curiosity. Overtrying eliminates these moments. Constant availability, overcommunication, and premature emotional investment remove the ebb and flow that makes attraction exciting. By stepping back, maintaining emotional balance, and allowing natural anticipation to build. You create an environment where attraction can intensify organically. And even your mindset toward outcomes matters. When you try too hard, you are often attached to a specific outcome, projecting your expectations onto him. This attachment creates tension, anxiety, and pressure, which he unconsciously senses. By detaching from specific outcomes while maintaining clarity about your boundaries and values, you shift from desperation to desirability. You become someone who is attractive not because of what you do, but because of the energy you embody. And finally, consider the practice of self-investment as an ongoing strategy. Your magnetism is amplified when you consistently engage in activities, relationships, and goals that enrich your life. The more full and vibrant your own life, the less dependent you are on him for fulfillment. Independence is not indifference, it is power. It communicates that your happiness is not contingent on another person, and this freedom is profoundly alluring. When you act from a place of wholeness, you stop pushing him away and begin creating a dynamic of mutual desire, respect, and authentic connection.